will probably see this video later. So we're working on it, and we're going to upload it. You'll see this not live. This is live, but you'll see it when it's not live, just so you know, if you're not here. But those of you that are here, I have a special treat for you. A man who needs no introduction, and wytshadow. wytshadow has won the RF Capture the Flag a couple of times. And wytshadow here is one of those guys that runs a website that many of you might have heard of called Wiggle. And so he's going to show us his best dance right now.
My best dance? It's just the same two-step with a little twist.
I like it. I like it. All right, now that we've loosened him up, this is as loose as he's going to get. I now present to you Signals in Space.
Hey everybody, how you doing? All right, so I think our talks today are sort of building on a theme, and we were inspired by a previous presenter. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, though. I've already gotten an introduction, so I'll keep this short. I'm Ark, or Andy. I'm one of the co-founders of Wiggle.net. You can spot my other co-founders right back there. That's all we're going to get. And Wiggle is now 22 years old. We started doing this after hearing Pete Shipley's talk about war driving at DEFCON 9. Yeah. And we've been running this hobby project ever since. People have not gotten bored of it. And because you haven't gotten bored, we haven't gotten bored, we're going to keep doing it. In my day job, I mostly work in fintech, and Wiggle is part of how I look at myself in the mirror in the morning when I wake up.
And hello, I'm wytshadow. Was in the Air Force, worked in Air Force Space Command before they changed that into the Space Force. After that, I got out and became a pen tester, kind of specializing in wireless pen testing. Developed a pen testing tool called SniffAir. Just a pen testing framework to make Wi-Fi hacking easier. From there, worked on a bit of research against OWE Wi-Fi networks and presented on that at DEF CON as well. And then the last couple years, I've been playing in the RFCTF over here on this side of the room. And my team has won it, Team What the Freak, the last 2 years, where we won the black badge.
Put the mic next to your mouth.
Sorry. I'm passing it anyways.
Well, we got that debugged. Our silent partner up here tonight is Dragorn, the author of Kismet. He's unable to join us out here right now, but he's been part of the genesis of this idea and has been working hard to help this become a reality. So this idea got started about a year ago, a little over a year ago, based on some at first joking conversations as Liz Anning started launching their space balloon, and we had to increase our data filters in Wiggle to accommodate the EAR service ceiling limit for altitude above the Earth's surface, where we didn't just filter data out and throw it away. Wiggle will now trilaterate all the way up to 40 kilometers above the Earth's surface right now. Yeah. But we could go further. And we realized that with commercial spaceflight and exploration becoming a booming industry, as well as the remarkable devotion of our insane hobbyist audience, it was going to be only a matter of time before we had to accommodate other worlds. So we figured we'd pick the two most likely to get stumbled first, two that already probably have a couple of networks on them, our own moon and Mars. Also, we didn't want other people doing this first. It just wasn't acceptable. So what we're going to talk about today is the work that we've done to support stumbling in space, specifically on other satellites and planets, what the solutions that we've come up with will look like and how they'll work, the state of networks in space, which is a little bit indeterminate right now, but not for our lack of trying to figure it out. And then we have a demo, because this wouldn't be any fun without a demo. If you're not interested in those things, feel free to hack quietly or leave. Totally understand. Not everybody's cup of tea. So first of all, you can stumble in space. Specifically, you can stumble on any planet with enough gravity to keep a wireless network sort of attached to the surface or near the surface or someplace where we can see it. We have decided that we're going to start out in easy mode. Right now, when you talk about bodies in space, you start with the star, the solar system that they're in, the body counting outward from the star, and then if it happens to be a satellite of one of those bodies, the sub-body index. So right now we're standing on Sol 3.0, and the moon is Sol 3.1. Mars is going to be Sol 4.0. There are other ways to do this. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on those because you don't care and we're not implementing them. You can talk about everything relative to where it is on Earth. That's a lot of math to work your way back to doing things like drawing dots on maps, which is kind of our whole thing. And orbits are really interesting, and there are neat, short, compact ways of expressing the orbits of things, but those can change over time, especially if things have power and can change their orbits. We decided to save that for later, so sorry if we're not going to be able to do ISS stumbling from this talk, but if it ever dips low enough, I think we can probably catch it. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to our GPS expert.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how GPS works, kind of what the point of it is. People typically think of GPS as providing location data, but it also provides timing data. All the data centers around the world that keep the internet running, they need accurate timing. They receive that from GPS. So it's important for GPS when it's locating you on planet Earth with the process of trilateration to not only know where you are, but when you are. So it's important for that accurate timing information, not just for keeping the internet running, but just for timing in general. Now, over the next couple slides, I'm going to describe how trilateration works and talk about how multiple constellations can help improve the data that you get from trilateration. And this one? Yeah. Okay, so here's a map of the United States. And you could just imagine that you're somewhere here. Your receiver's going to pick up a signal from one satellite. And with that data, it's going to say, hey, you're probably somewhere on the western side of the United States. Now, once your receiver picks up a second satellite, you can see there's a bit of an overlap there where if you only received data from the blue circle, it would appear that you're in the middle of the United States, but if you were only receiving data from the red circle, it would appear you're on that side, the west side of the United States. So you add in a third circle, and you can see where the area where they overlap gets even smaller, and if you zoom in, you can see it's like Denver, Colorado. Now, you could use your imagination, and if you were to keep adding circles to this, you would see the area of overlap gets even smaller and smaller. That would be more precise data to accurately locate where you are. Now, your phone uses a variety of other signals as well, such as nearby cell phone towers and nearby Wi-Fi networks to kind of help improve the speed of this. But yeah, that's essentially how trilateration works and how multi-constellations can help do that or help improve that data. So what's up with GPS in other places like the moon and Mars? There's no GPS satellites orbiting Mars, so you couldn't just go there and turn on your phone and Google Maps and try to get around. The way that rovers get around is real interesting because it's basically all optical observations. There's cameras on the rovers where they can kind of see where they're at. Then there's cameras in space on the Mars Recon orbital satellite that goes around and takes pictures of Mars. And then you can combine those two images with the actual size of the wheels of the Mars rover. So NASA knows the actual circumference of those wheels, and they can measure how far the rover has gone by how many rotations of the wheel have occurred. So it's a lot of looking at where something was, looking at where it's gone, and then back calculating kind of where it was and where it's gone. So in the future, we're a far ways from GPS on the moon or Mars, but what we're more closer to is something that kind of came out of the Space App Challenge in 2018 called PLANS, or Planetary Navigational Sensor System, where you basically use a bunch of radio emitters to determine location on the ground, similar to how your phone looks for cell towers and nearby Wi-Fi networks to get that initial location. We would use that same concept just on the moon. And yeah, and now I will pass it back.
We're going to do another quick switch here. So what we've got right now is basically a data source for position. We need a way to record that, and we're kind of in luck here. So we need to know what time it is on both of these planets. If we're installing radio beacons there, we can put really precise clocks in that. That takes that out of the equation. The moon is a little bit different from Mars. It's tidally locked, so it sort of runs on an Earth or Earth-pinned calendar. That makes our life easy. We're going to stick with that. Mars is a little different because its times, it has a longer year, it has a longer day, and expressing that in terms of Earth times is going to be a problem, so we're going to have to keep working on timestamps in that respect. Once we need to express this information, we're in luck because we've decided to use the same 360 degree by 180 degree on the Moon and Mars, not us, you know, Wiggle and Dragorn, but instead actual standards bodies have decided to do that. Right now, when you look at a projection on the web, in most cases, what you're looking at is something called Web Mercator. It's something, it's a square representation. It's a square presentation of the way that coordinates on Earth work. It means that things are narrow and tight towards the equator, and they get really spaced out towards the poles. But it breaks down into nice multiples of 2, and you can tile it, and it'll look smooth and shiny the whole time. We've proposed similar spheroid coordinate sets for the Moon and Mars under the GCS 2000 Moon and Mars setups. Esri supports these already. A bunch of other mapping packages are doing it. So we're going to stick with that. A degree on the Moon and Mars is going to be the same as a degree on Earth, but the distance that it represents will be fundamentally different.
All right, so we're a long way from GPS satellites around the moon, but this is kind of what's on the horizon. So NASA and JPL, they already have this open source database called Horizons, where basically has all the telemetry information you would need to locate objects in space. And it's not just for engineers, it's open for civilians and anyone to use in any kind of research. So it's useful for locating things such as LunaNet. So LunaNet is what NASA plans to use to put internet and navigational services on the moon. And you can see it's a combination of ground stations here on Earth that could talk to relay stations, relay satellites, or go through something like the ISS that then relays to a lunar satellite. And then on the moon's surface, there would be a bunch of radio emitters, similar to Wi-Fi networks, that people working there, rovers and such, would use to help locate themselves on the lunar surface. In addition to this, they're also using machine learning and artificial intelligence with the video feeds coming in from the rovers, so they can use known landmarks the same way that you would give someone directions to your house and say, hey, go to this gas station and turn left or right. The lunar rover can look at certain craters and say, hey, I know exactly where I am on the lunar surface because this crater's to my left and this one's on my right. And then using those radio emitters in accordance or in tandem with that data, you can locate yourself on the surface.
All right, so we're almost there. Next up, how we're going to gather the data. This is the thing that we don't have a working example of yet, but we'll be using position data fusion the way that we've been talking about. We'll be sending it back to Earth because Earth is where Wiggle is right now. When hosting costs on the Moon and Mars change, we may choose to revisit that, but that doesn't seem likely in the near term. We're not going to have the level of real time that you're used to from Wiggle right now, and by real time, I'm sort of backhandedly apologizing to everybody who had to wait a long time during the Worldwide War Drive. Yes, we got a little backed up, but we always catch up in the end. It is possible, certainly on the Moon and maybe on Mars, to measure signals from Earth. With enough directional antennas and enough good luck and maybe enough distributed sensors, we might be able to do a little bit of that from here, but we're not counting on it for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Attached to the bibliography of this that we'll post at the end, there's, even without the ionosphere on our end, there's still signal attenuation in a vacuum, and we're going to have to keep dealing with that. So, now that we've got all this squared away, how are we going to report it? Wiggle today is announcing version 1.5 of the CSV format that we created. This includes in the header sentence new notation for star, body, and subbody. This does mean that you're going to have to reboot your rig when you switch worlds. We don't think that's going to be a problem for anybody, but if you bump into that, let us know, and we'll talk about maybe adding a second header sentence or something like that. We're also finally addressing our legacy channel frequency problem, so we're adding frequency to the format. Sorry that took us so long, but rewriting the parsers is a pain in the butt. The other thing that Dragorn has been, in addition to figuring out what a stumbling rig on Mars is going to look like, the other thing Dragorn has been helping us out with is we're busy devising a new format that's going to have a hierarchical JSON representation of all the data that's in the CSVs right now, and will support multi-world stumbling for when you're ready for that. And obviously the Kismet LogDB databases are going to include this starting immediately as well. So, you patiently sat through all of this speculation. Now we can do a demo. First of all, let's take a look at the moon on Wiggle. This is live today. However, for the purposes of this demo, we spent a long time asking JPL to give us data, including Dr. Russ contacting them via the FBI, asking if maybe they could send some traces over. They blew off the FBI and Wiggle, so we're not feeling too bad about that. But in the meantime, here's the moon with Earth's data on it. Since it's that same coordinate projection system that we were talking about earlier, things are just going to be really close together. Oop. If I can successfully hit a link. I should have some patter ready for how long this can take to load here. But as you can see, Wiggle's tiles overlaid on what is actually a Web Mercator projection of the moon. And if we scroll a little bit, there's Mars, all the same filtering, there's Europe, all the same filtering technology that we've been using all along will be in from day one. And because there aren't a lot of other landmarks or roads or political boundaries in the moon right now, we're just going with the crater names. Feel free to suggest other additions. We're happy to add things. Similarly, we've got Mars working today. As you can see from the URLs, these are available to anybody who's logged in. Feel free to start sending us data. We're excited to start mapping things. So I think that brings us to the end of our talk. I wanted to give a few shout outs here to the RF Hacker Sanctuary. You guys are amazing. Thank you. Wouldn't be here without you. This community is amazing and vibrant, and we're just proud to be a part of it. To Lausanning for upping the bar, literally, and forcing us to both expand the way that we do things now and actually start thinking about how we're going to do things next. A special thanks to Dr. Russ, because he got the FBI to reach out to JPL for us, and when's that ever going to happen in our lives again? And finally, thank you to DEF CON, and I hope that we have fulfilled the motto this year: the future will prevail. All right, and now for the fun bit. Who's got questions? You, sir, in the front row. I'm going to delegate this question to our GPS expert.
We can talk offline.
All right, so that's our answer for that one. Next question. No other questions? Should we give away the last Wiggle Wi-Fi hat? Oh wait, did you have another question? Hit me up.
Right now, what's the geode look like for non-Earth planets? Are you assuming a perfectly round sphere, or is there actually?
Well, so we're doing two things. We're starting with a spheroid. There's not a lot of all of these are oblate spheres, right? The coordinate systems are nice and tidy when the sphere itself kind of isn't. But we're following ArcGIS's sphere mapping things. So they've got a description of the spheroid that's part of that GCS 2000 descriptor that we're using, which will flatten it appropriately in the right places. I'm really not looking forward to Sol 4.1 and 4.2 because Phobos and Deimos are some ugly-looking little potatoes of satellites, and that's going to be really weird. But I don't think we're putting any wireless networks there anytime soon. When that changes, let's talk. But the other thing that we do is we apply a surface map for the altitude. We've got an altitude map that we apply over it that keeps things reasonably honest. And even though things aren't particularly tall on the moon and are particularly tall on Mars, relative to the scale of the spheroid, craters on the moon look much more extreme in an elevation map, which is kind of interesting. Any other questions? All right, I think we should give away a Wiggle hat. We're going to ask a trivia question, though, for this. Guesses are allowed, but we need, and I'll give you a hint here, which is in 2003, we finally started recording what files generated what networks in Wiggle. Before that, we were just pushing data in as quickly as possible. What file format and what package is the first recorded upload in Wiggle in? Renderman. He said NetStumbler NS1. Unfortunately, that is not the case. I'm going to need a software package as well as the format. No, unfortunately, it was not a hand-generated Excel CSV, but that would have been really cool. Any other guesses? Somebody wants a hat. Come on. Unfortunately, no, not AirSnort CSV. Nope, not pandas. I love it though. I mean, that's one. It doesn't name the package, or maybe I can't hear you. Last chance for the hat. Oh. Nope, not Python. It is not JSON in a Python package. So, no, not DStumbler. Although I did commit GPS code. I did commit GPS fixes to DStumbler back in the day. Yeah. All right. So CSV was the correct extension. It was, however, actually a Kismet file. So CSV. All right. Awesome. Thanks to everyone. I think that's all we've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wiggle. We love you, Wiggle.
Oh, you don't want to love us.